That small flame, no bigger than your thumbnail, was the difference between dignity and danger after sunset. We imagine ancient towns through the lens of electricity, bright, safe, controlled. But what did it actually mean to live without a single switch, without a single guaranteed source of light after dark? How did families organize their entire existence around the absence of something we consider a basic human right? Stay until the end, because understanding this changes how we read the Gospels. The stone house stands pressed against dozens of others, sharing walls in a dense cluster that forms the typical Galilean town. Inside, the space is smaller than a modern bedroom, roughly 12 feet by 15 feet for an entire family. The floor is packed earth, smoothed by years of footsteps, covered in some areas with reed mats that smell of dust and dry grass. The walls are limestone blocks chinked with mud, whitewashed once a year before Passover, their surface cool to the touch even in summer heat. There is one door, low enough that adults must duck, and one small window, not glass, but an opening that can be covered with a wooden shutter or cloth. The ceiling is wooden beams overlaid with branches, mud, and packed earth. When it rains, water sometimes seeps through, and the family sleeps with clay bowls positioned to catch the drips, the rhythmic plink, 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 a familiar night sound. The interior is divided not by walls, but by function and height. Against one wall, a raised platform of stone and packed clay serves as the sleeping area. The family sleeps there together, parents, children, sometimes grandparents, on thin reed mats with woolen blankets that smell of lanolin and wood smoke. Body heat is shared resource. Privacy, as we understand it, does not exist. Conversations, arguments, dreams, and nightmares are communal experiences. Below this platform, in the lower section of the house, the family's donkey or goat might shelter at night, their body heat rising to warm the sleeping family above, their smell a constant presence, their movements and sounds part of the night's texture. The center of the house contains the most critical object, the hearth. It is not a fireplace with a chimney, but a shallow depression in the floor, lined with stones, or sometimes a raised clay platform. Smoke rises and escapes slowly through the door, the window, and gaps in the roof, filling the upper portion of the house with a permanent haze. The family's eyes burn, their throats carry a chronic scratchiness, their clothing, their hair, their skin. Everything smells of smoke all the time. But this is not discomfort to be avoided, it is survival to be managed. The fire cooks their food, bakes their bread, boils their water, provides their only heat in winter, and offers their primary source of light when the sun descends. But fire requires fuel, and fuel requires labor. Every day, someone, usually women and children, must gather fuel. In areas where wood is scarce, they collect dried dung, shaping it into patties with their hands, setting it to dry on rocks or walls. The smell is sharp and organic. The touch is exactly what you imagine. This is not a task done once a week. It is daily maintenance of survival. A family that fails to gather sufficient fuel faces cold food, darkness, and danger. The fire must not go out overnight, because relighting it without matches means friction, patience, and precious time. So the hearth is banked carefully before sleep, buried in ash to hold heat, a glowing coal kept alive beneath the surface like a fragile secret. When the sun sets, the transformation is immediate and total. The town does not gradually dim like a modern city with its streetlights and illuminated windows. It plunges into darkness so complete that movement becomes treacherous. The narrow streets between houses, some barely 3 feet wide, become invisible corridors where every step risks a turned ankle on uneven stone, a collision with a neighbor, or worse. There are no public lights, no torches lining the paths, no municipality responsible for safe passage after dark. The streets belong to the night. Inside the house, the family gathers around the single oil lamp that will carry them through the evening. It is a small clay vessel, brown or reddish, fitting in the palm of your hand. It has a round body that holds olive oil, a pinch spout where a wick of twisted flax or wool emerges, and a hole at the top for refilling. The wick burns with a small, unstable flame that produces more smell than light, the distinct scent of burning olive oil, slightly sweet, slightly acrid. This flame illuminates perhaps 3 feet in radius with useful light. Beyond that, shadows deepen into impenetrable black. One lamp, one family. The mathematics of light becomes the mathematics of proximity. Work that requires vision must happen within that small circle of illumination. The mother repairs torn clothing, her needle moving in and out of fabric, her face inches from her hands, her eyes straining. The father examines a tool that needs mending, turning it slowly in the dim glow. Children huddle close, listening to stories, because reading, for the rare literate family member, is nearly impossible in this light. Scrolls are precious, and straining to read them by lamplight risks both eyesight and the accidental ignition of expensive parchment. The oil itself represents significant expense. Olive oil is food, medicine, fuel, and light, a multi-purpose resource that must be allocated carefully. A family debates. Do we burn oil for light so the children can do their tasks, or do we save it for cooking and sit in darkness? Do we refill the lamp one more time tonight, or do we preserve what remains for tomorrow's meal? These are not theoretical questions. They are nightly calculations that separate comfort from hardship. A wealthy family might burn 2 or 3 lamps, transforming their home into a beacon of prosperity. A poor family might sit in complete darkness most nights, the oil too precious to burn for mere illumination. When the lamp runs dry, the flame sputters and dies, and the house is swallowed instantly by blackness so absolute that you cannot see your hand before your face. There is no backup plan, no secondary system, no emergency lighting. The family sits or lies in total darkness, navigating by touch and memory, waiting for dawn. This experience, the sudden, complete absence of light, shapes their understanding of fear, of vulnerability, of dependence. In darkness, anything could be outside that door. In darkness, a child could wander and fall. In darkness, a threat goes unseen until it is too late. This is why Jesus speaks of light the way he does. When he says, "I am the light of the world," his audience does not hear a poetic metaphor. They hear survival. They hear the difference between function and helplessness. They hear the value of the single flame that allows life to continue after sunset. When he tells them, "Let your light shine before others," he is not suggesting casual visibility. He is invoking the image of the lamp placed on a stand, elevated, intentional, refusing to hide the costly, precious light that could help others navigate darkness. The rhythm of life without electricity is dictated entirely by the sun. The family wakes not to an alarm, but to the gradual appearance of light through the window and door. First a grey suggestion, then a pale glow, then the full arrival of morning. There is no snooze button, no controlled delay. Dawn means work begins, because every hour of daylight is irreplaceable. Tasks that require vision must happen now in natural light, because later there will be only that single struggling lamp or nothing at all. Morning routines unfold in a sequence determined by light availability. The fire is revived from its banked coals, fed with fuel, coaxed into flame. Bread dough, prepared the night before, is shaped and baked. Water must be fetched from the town well or cistern, a task usually assigned to women and girls, who walk with clay jars balanced on their heads or shoulders, joining the other women in the early morning procession. This is not a quick turn of a faucet. It is a journey, a social gathering, a physical effort that must happen every single day. because water cannot be stored indefinitely in a hot climate without risking contamination. The well is the center of information exchange. Women speak while waiting their turn, sharing news, discussing concerns, negotiating marriages, warning about dangers. They know who is sick, who is prosperous, who is struggling, who has given birth, who has died. The well is where reputation is built or destroyed, where alliances form, where the invisible social networks that govern town life are maintained and reinforced. When Jesus speaks to the Samaritan woman at the well in the middle of the day, the time itself is significant. Noon is when the sun is hottest, when most women have already completed this task. Her presence then suggests isolation, perhaps shame, perhaps rejection from the morning gathering of respectable women. Inside the home, the workday continues in full light. Grain is ground by hand using two stone mills, a lower stationary stone and an upper stone turned in circles, crushing wheat or barley between them. The sound is a constant grinding rasp, stone against grain. It takes hours to produce enough flour for one day's bread. The woman's hands develop calluses in specific patterns. Her shoulders ache from the repetitive circular motion. This is why Jesus' parable of the woman who lost one coin and swept the entire house to find it resonates so powerfully. In a home with a packed earth floor, dim even in daylight, with only one small window, finding a dropped coin means sweeping every inch methodically, perhaps even digging into the floor's surface, because that coin represents a day's wages, compensation for hours of grinding, baking, fetching, cleaning. As the day progresses, the family's activities migrate to follow the light. Men work in fields or at trades, carpentry, stonework, fishing, shepherding, occupations that happen outdoors where vision is unobstructed. Women work in courtyards when possible, where sunlight is direct and tasks like spinning, weaving, food preparation, and child supervision can happen in brightness. The courtyard is shared space, often used by multiple families, a semi-public zone where work and social life blend. Children play there, supervised collectively by whichever women are present. Meals are prepared there when weather permits. Animals are tended there, but as afternoon fades toward evening, there is an urgency, a quickening. Tasks must be completed before darkness. Bread must finish baking. Water jars must be filled. Animals must be secured. Tools must be stored. The family must gather inside before the streets become impassable. There is a visible transition point each day, the moment when productive work stops because light has failed and the family shifts into survival mode. Huddling around the fire and the single lamp, waiting out the darkness until dawn releases them again. Winter changes everything. The days shorten, stealing precious working hours from both ends. The cold penetrates the stone walls, seeps through the earth floor, settles into bones and lungs. The family burns more fuel for heat, depleting reserves faster. Smoke fills the house more densely because the door and window must stay closed against the cold. Respiratory illnesses spread easily in these conditions. Chronic coughs, infections, fevers that can kill children and the elderly. The shared sleeping platform becomes even more crowded as bodies press together for warmth. Blankets are insufficient. The donkey or goat below becomes not just a source of heat, but a necessity for survival. Food storage presents constant challenges without refrigeration. Grain can be kept if protected from moisture and pests, stored in large clay jars sealed with cloth or clay stoppers, sometimes buried partially in the floor to keep cool. But insects find their way in. Mice chew through barriers. Mold develops in humid conditions. A family must inspect their grain supply regularly, sifting out contamination, accepting losses as inevitable. Fresh food lasts only hours in heat. Milk sours quickly and must be converted to cheese or yogurt immediately. Meat, when available, must be consumed the day of slaughter or preserved through salting or drying, processes that require salt, another expensive commodity. Fish are cleaned, salted and dried in the sun, becoming hard and pungent, unrecognizable from their fresh state. This precariousness shapes every decision. There is no abundance that can be safely stored indefinitely, no surplus that guarantees future security, no backup system if the current harvest fails, or the stored grain spoils, or the olive oil runs out before the next pressing. Families live in a state of perpetual present tense survival, where today's labor produces today's food and today's light, and tomorrow requires another full cycle of the same effort. When Jesus teaches his disciples to pray, "Give us this day our daily bread," he's not encouraging simple faith. He's articulating their actual reality. Bread is daily, light is daily, water is daily, fuel is daily. Nothing is guaranteed beyond the immediate moment. The absence of electricity means the absence of independence. Families cannot function in isolation. They need neighbors to share labor during harvest, to watch children, to lend tools, to provide help during illness or crisis. The dense clustering of houses is not just architectural, it is social infrastructure. Shared walls mean shared warmth. Shared courtyards mean shared supervision and shared resources. Shared wells mean shared information and shared responsibility. A family that loses favor with neighbors loses access to the networks that make survival possible. This is why honor and shame are not abstract concepts but mechanisms of life and death. Reputation determines whether help comes when needed. Now we understand why Jesus speaks so often of houses, lamps, bread, water, and daily provision. These are not metaphors searching for spiritual meaning. They are spiritual meanings emerging from physical reality. The light that must not be hidden under a basket is the expensive, essential, life-giving flame that a family depends on. The house built on rock versus sand is the difference between shelter that protects and structure that collapses when the rain seeps through and the floods come. The daily bread is the actual negotiation with scarcity that every family conducts every single day. The families living in ancient towns without electricity were not primitive people waiting for modernity to rescue them. They were fully human communities navigating the constraints of their material world with intelligence, cooperation, and resilience. Their faith was not abstract. It was tested daily against cold, darkness, hunger, and uncertainty. When they heard Jesus teach, they heard someone who understood their lives completely, who knew what it meant when the lamp went out, when the bread ran short, when the darkness fell, and there was nothing to do but wait for morning.